what I loved about where I was at with this training was just how adapted my body was and how fit it felt. Like towards the end when BJ would tell me to go out and do a 2.5 hour run, at the end I wanted to keep going. Like I could feel like my body was definitely, the fitness was there, and I felt good about that considering where I was a year ago after I ran Boston. I was not in a good place. Yeah, so different.
But I think that what I noticed for myself, at least, is that I was asking about those things, but I didn't feel any of the future in my body, if that makes sense. Like I didn't have any anxiety around it or anxiousness or anything because I was so rooted in the now, even though I was asking about those things. Like the things that I thought would worry me down the road, like I didn't let myself think too much about the rappelling down the waterfall until I got there. And then I was like, well, this is scary. And then I was just in it and then it was over. And I think that was helpful versus running up, 20 some miles and then stressing about it the whole time. So I think I did a lot more to be in the moment than like thinking ahead to the next drop spot or whatever, like the thing that I was worried about coming ahead.
If I didn't have that courage to look at what I was fearful of, I never would have started trail running. And when I started trail running by myself. And so I really got a chance to face those fears. And I've been looking into like what courage means recently, and because I talk about how it really takes courage to live, the life that you and I live, BJ. And courage is not about not being afraid. It's about being afraid, but you're not paralyzed. And I think that that's a great way to transmute fear into courage and keep moving forward. So what you're fearful of is going to remain there until you deal with it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Jess, your host, and this is the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. She is a limb of her mothership, Yogi Triathlete Holistic Performance. We are triathlon and run coaching, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and plant-based nutrition. And we, as in all of you and us and Clark and our guests today, are on a mission to create a better world. So thank you so much for coming back week after week. We know you guys have a choice, and we really are in deep thanks of all of you. We feel this community. We're getting more and more people reaching out to us, coming up to us at races, introducing themselves. So please keep coming out of the woodwork, you guys. We are a family. We are a tribe. And this community is one badass, powerful force that will not be stopped. So I'm coming to you today with the Beej, with Liz McCutcheon, Yogi Triathlete athlete, with Jill Naraki. Did I get it?
Yep.
All right. I had about 20 times pronounced it the wrong way. And the three of us, the three gals, not only finished, but we crushed the Mendocino 50k. So that's what we're going to smack down today and flesh out as our experience on the trail, with the intention that it will share some insight into what this ultra running thing is all about and the inspiration that we all have for moving forward and continuing to push ourselves by peeling back those layers and shining our inner badass to the rest of the world. And that's what we're all about here at Yogi Triathlete, you guys. So super grateful to have these amazing ladies to have shared the trail with them yesterday. And congratulations, you guys, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Told you that was mandatory. I had to say thank you for having us. All right. How are you feel? Let's start with just like right now, the present moment. Liz, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. A little sore, some knee stuff going on, but normal stuff. Feeling awesome.
You had some knee stuff going on in the trail yesterday.
Yes.
We're going to get into that and how you navigated that. Yeah. How's the mindset? What are you thinking about what you accomplished yesterday, your first ultra? You've been a runner for a really, really long time. You were on the podcast with me back earlier in March after we did an epic training weekend in prep for this race. So where are you mentally?
I'm good. I can't believe it's over. I can't believe we did it already. I feel like it went so fast. Like it went fast, but it didn't go fast.
Like the last 8 miles.
Yes.
Even though they were our fastest miles, didn't go very fast.
Right.
That stretch to the campground was like a marathon. But where are you feeling like psyched? You glad you did it? What do you think about your experienced marathoner and road racer? What do you think about the trail?
I loved it. It was so, like, it was hard to remember what you were doing at the time because everything was so beautiful. Like the trails, everything was so green, the flowers, the views, the people, us laughing.
And we had done, BJ and I
fun.
did a mindfulness talk on Friday, and it was so cool because I walked into the room and I thought I was in the wrong room because it was like packed, which is amazing to me, and that's beautiful. And I think that's a sign for what's happening in the future. People are waking up to this and they know that there's a easier way to flow in life and to be super skillful. And I kept seeing people out on the trail. Like I remember I passed some people and they were like, "You're the mindful lady," and what you said yesterday, I'm doing it right now. It's just so cool. Jill, you are an experienced marathoner, training in Brooklyn for this ultra marathon trail race. And how are you feeling today?
I feel great. I think yesterday was really good. I felt lucky that I got to be behind you for a bit of it since it was my first time running on the trails.
You had a couple first time things yesterday. We'll get into that.
River crossing, first trail flop, first rappelling down a waterfall.
And trail shoes.
Regular, first time in my trail shoes.
So what do you think?
Doing it.
What do you think about that thing where they say don't try anything new on race day?
Doesn't pertain to you.
Yeah. Just like everything else. No, I guess, I don't know. You get out there and you just do it. You do what you do with what you've got.
So you literally had like brand new shoes yesterday. That you told me
They had been used the day before when we went out for our
Shakeout.
and you said that you wore them to work once, and then you wore them on the treadmill once.
Yeah.
Did you have any moments of like, I'm wearing brand new shoes and I'm running on the trail, which I haven't done, and I'm like doing these steep downhills and up? Like, did you have any fear about like, what the hell am I doing wearing brand new shoes?
Only when I first bought them, because I literally bought those shoes, took them, they came to my house, so I had them. In the middle of the night, I started panicking about it and ordered another pair of trail shoes just to have a backup that then came and were too small, so I sent them back and thought that was just a sign.
But weren't the shoes you had on yesterday kind of too small too?
After my feet expanded 30 miles in, yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to be a few toenails short in a few
I think you're going to be a few toenails and a few layers of skin short too. I think it's funny that like how the mind works, that you got these new shoes and then you started freaking out about having new shoes, so you ordered more new shoes that were going to maybe make you feel better.
Yeah. It didn't work.
It didn't work.
But I did put my regular shoes that I'm used to running in my drop bag, which I then didn't take anything out of at all. But I think it gave me peace of mind on the trail.
Yeah, I felt like when we were at the drop bag station, we were trying to figure out what to do with the stuff, but we actually really didn't need it at all. All right, let's talk about training. Liz, you're training with BJ. BJ is my coach as well. BJ, what did you do for Liz training back east? Like how, because for me it was easy. Just throw me on the trails, throw me in a minivan at 4:30 in the morning with a bunch of trail runners, and then I was off.
Yeah, that was pretty easy. All I had to do was wake up with you.
I was easy.
Drive a mile up the road. Yeah, Liz, training back in New England. At this time, it was a really, really tough winter, and Liz didn't get on the trails until, 5-6 weeks ago, maybe.
Less.
Yeah.
Definitely less.
Yeah. So you were doing a lot on the road.
Yes.
And luckily you do live in a hilly section, so it was very rolly, so you could get the hills in. Yeah. And then we added the Mendo maker.
That was a good one.
Yeah, and it simulates some of the things you'll experience on a rocky, hilly trail, but it also brings in the strength factor of jumping off the treadmill and doing some other stuff and then jumping back on. So it adds that variety. But yeah, so for Liz, I think we got you up to 4.5, 5 hours out there for a run. Yeah. And then Liz came out to visit us, as you know, a few weeks ago for a big, big training weekend, which I think was really key because it got her out of the weather, the cold, to experience some warmth. And because it was definitely warmer yesterday. It was probably 55, 60 tops.
Towards the end, I would say it was warmer.
Warmer than that? Yeah.
Definitely warmer than that.
So it's good to get some. Yeah, it was 40 something to start. But yeah, so I think training was just, the focus was to get you to consistently be out there, putting a load on, maybe not the load of trail running, but the simulation of hills, downhills, duration. I think I had you do a long run and then the next day come back and do recovery or even add some extra runs on, and walking. We did a lot of walking.
Did a lot of walking.
Yeah.
Was able to include my dogs Thor and Ginger on that, so we could. And I got on the trails that way. I would wear my snowshoes.
Yeah, that's right.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I only fell a few times on those.
Well, we had this discussion, but that was my hesitation for you going out and running on these snowy trails, especially within the weeks leading into the race where you hadn't before, was just the potential to, sort of slip and slide. But you navigated it well, and you had a great race. But I don't know, what was your perspective of the training?
I thought the training was really, I had no perspective because I've never run one of these races before. And the key was coming out to see you guys in California the beginning of March and doing that trail run with you, Jess, where we did over 4 hours and we climbed 3,000, descended 3,000. Because then my quads really got a workout. And then coming back a day later to do the half. After I did that, I felt much more confident about doing the race. Now that I have perspective after the race, for next time, I definitely need to do more climbing and descending, going up and down, just. I think that's where I need to strengthen myself a little bit more. But I thought the training overall was awesome. It couldn't have gone better, and I felt good the majority of the race yesterday. I think when my right knee started bothering, that was just because I'd been on my feet so long. That's just what that was, and I have to strengthen some other stuff there, but nothing. I don't think we could have done anything differently.
I don't think so either. And, when I came off of last year doing this race, I said to BJ, more hiking. Definitely more hiking. And so I did more hiking. I went bigger trails this year, longer miles, more hiking, more just pounding downhills. But if I didn't have the base of last year, if I didn't have the 50K experience, I don't think I would have been able, I couldn't have built any more last year than I did. And so I was taking all of last year and then building on that. And I felt a huge difference on the trail yesterday. The downhill, definitely more in flow and more of just allowing my legs to go hard and fast down without worrying about, because they're just pounding down, but allowing that to happen and just trusting the training that I have. But I would say the biggest difference I found was hiking. That's where I would pass the most people, was in the hiking. And I just felt like I could go forever. And I think that was the hiking that I've been doing on these longer trail runs. So maybe we're out there for, 4.5 hours and I'm getting, 17 miles in or 15 miles at a 4-hour workout. But the quality and the strength, I felt that yesterday, and I saw so many people faltering on that piece. So I think for you, Liz, as, and BJ, you guys working together, you just build on what you have, and then that takes it to the next level. Because I think because would you agree that trail running is a completely different sport?
Oh, absolutely.
It's a total. It's like a brand new sport.
You can't even compare it to the road.
You can't even compare it. It's crazy.
No.
I didn't understand that until I started doing it, and so I think that you come away with that okay, now let's build more height, because you can have more power on the uphills, more power on the downhills, and. I was a huge pusher of strength, and I think there were times where BJ was like, all right, well, you're getting kind of close, you're doing all the strength, but I would even just do 10 minutes, one round of strength before I went out to run. I just felt because I remembered last year, more strength, more strength, more strength. And I think that it's not about going 40 minutes every day. Towards the end, he would be okay, 10 minutes of strength or 15 minutes of strength. It's just continuing to keep those muscles firing so that when you get tired, those muscles are used to firing.
Yep.
And you're not compensating.
Well, and I feel like coming out to run with you on those trails, I learned a lot about going downhill with the same going in flow. And I saw that yesterday when we had that big descent. I also felt like Jill and I both did really well. We passed people going on the uphill too.
Yeah, you
just
guys
powering up.
We're amazing.
Those hills.
Let's take it over to Jill.
Let's use the term those verts.
Yeah, the verts. So they say the vert. Jill, we talked a little bit about your trail experience training in Brooklyn, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to get you on this podcast because it's possible, people, if you live in Manhattan, to train for a trail race. You know, I mean, it's obviously it's not ideal, but you made it work. And so you were amazing out there yesterday.
Oh, thanks.
Really, really amazing. And I'm glad that you fell so then we could all be like, good, because that's over with. Because there was like...
That's a rite of, it's a rite of
There was
passage.
so many times where I was like, girl, pick up your feet. I could, like, there was one time, like, at the beginning, like, I saw this drag. Like, there was, like, a mark behind her foot. I'm like, she's going to fall so freaking hard. So we were, like, yelling at her all day, pick up your feet. And so finally she fell around, like, mile 18. I think we all breathed a sigh of relief that we had gotten that out of the way.
That was the only time I fell.
It was the only time. Well, except for when
water.
you took a Greg Louganis dive into the creek. So having the experience that you had yesterday, what do you think was key in your training to prepare you for, because there's no way you could have imagined what we were doing yesterday or simulated that. So looking back on your training, what were some key workouts that you did that you feel like helped you prepare you for that yesterday?
I mean, I did some hill repeats and stuff like that, but I think that in the end, it was just being sure that I always got my long runs in. When I learned about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and eating real food on the runs instead of just goos and salt tabs and stuff like that, I mean, I think that changed everything. But more than that, I feel like I am really used to running on roads, obviously, and in cities. And so a lot of what kept me going yesterday was just how beautiful everything was and how different it is than where I am. And, you know, I've run on trails one time before. And I remember going back to Brooklyn after that and going for runs in my regular places and being like, man, this place is a dump. So, you know, and I love it. And I love living there and running there and the community that's there. But it's nice to come and be somewhere that's so, every single term was different and beautiful and alive.
It's hard to get, it's hard to go in. I think it's hard to get into a dark place out there. Now, you know, ask me that after a 100-miler, but 50K is totally doable. What do you think about that for somebody who's a marathoner? So you've been a marathoner for a while, and somebody who's a marathon, like, oh, I could never do an ultra. I've always thought, even when I was at that distance, like, it's not, if I can do a marathon, I could totally do a 50K.
Well, I was surprised by yesterday. I think now I'm like, oh, I wonder what else I can do.
Yeah.
You know, but I think never once yesterday, there was in the big descent that Liz was talking about, I definitely was sort of like, well, that's the last time I'm going to see everyone on this race. But, you know, then that wasn't the case and everything settled out. But I think that I never once got into like a negative thought pattern out there. I never became self-critical of myself or anything like that. I think because I was doing all this new stuff. You know, I had new shoes. I had never been on trails. I was doing all this stuff and was like, wow, I'm doing this. This is happening. And it wasn't, there was no part of me that was like, pick up the pace. You're disappointing yourself. You're not good enough to be out here or anything like that. It was just like, wow, this is, look at this, you know?
Yeah, it was, you were saying, like, it was like an adventure. Like, every step was brand new.
Yeah, and it's always changing. It's not, I think I'm also so used to being on the road where it's about the cadence and about just being slow and steady, or not even slow and steady, but just steady. And there was nothing steady about yesterday.
There's nothing steady about yesterday. No. And then you realize that once you start doing the ups and the downs, and then you have to start going flat, the flat is the hardest. Oh. Right?
Yes.
So
why is that? So explain that.
Well, what I think is that the up, like you're hiking, you're kind of power hiking. So it's like, I'm just like doing walking lunges up. And then the down, I'm just pounding down. Like it's momentum. It's like, it's kind of fun because it's scary because, you know, and I've fallen on the downhill. It's absolutely not fun. But I also like to, you know, be on the edge. And I kind of channel like my old snowboarding days. Remember when we'd all be up at the top and you'd be like, Jess, don't lose us. And I would like take off and I would lose everybody and I would go way too fast. And I would go to a point on my snowboard when I thought, well, I want to get to the speed that if I go down, it might be the end. right? Like if I get, that's how fast I used to like to go on my snowboard. Like just like if I go down, like let me just go down like fast and furious. So that I kind of channel like a little bit of that comes back for me on the downhills, and I love it. Except for this time, I'm not like, you know, hadn't been drinking prior or smoking anything illegal.
Wearing a helmet.
Or wearing a helmet. But no, I'm just like, it's just full, unadulterated, sober, like amazing play for me to go down. So then when you're going flat, it's that, I think for me, that's where the mind comes in of like, how much longer are we going to go? How much longer is this?
Get me out of here. When am I seeing
when
the
does it
water
get to,
again?
when does it change
the
again?
ocean?
Yeah. When does it change again? And also, you're climbing, so you're using those climbing muscles, then you're pounding, and then when you're running flat, you're kind of using everything that's already fatigued. Nothing's really getting a rest. And I think I first experienced this when we did Ironman Cozumel, because people would be like, oh, a flat Ironman, it's easier. And I never bought into anything being easier about an Ironman, but I had always loved Ironman Lake Placid, Ironman Coeur d'Alene, the ones that were really hilly and described as difficult. But when we went to Cozumel, that was probably my most difficult Ironman, because you just nothing ever got a break. And so possibly this is just something that I love, is the ups and the downs, because now I'm seeing a trend that, you know, I loved the Austin Marathon, which was super hilly. And, you know, I never really liked flat courses. But physiologically, I think it's just because nothing gets a break. And then the mental piece can come in because maybe it's a little bit boring, even though when you're trail running, if you're not looking like right in front of you, because the tiniest little root or rock will take you down. So it definitely keeps you awake and ready. But does that answer the question? What do you guys think?
I'm just curious, because when I perceive it as the flat, it's like the fast section. Like now I really get to get things rolling. But when you're in that trail running mentality, I think that you explained it well, where it keeps your mind occupied. You're going up and down, and when you really have to focus on the present moment,
you got to push a little bit there too.
You got to push there.
That's probably why it's harder.
And it may be a little boring, but that's when you're with yourself. There's really not much you have to do. There's no climbing or descending. You're just kind of cruising.
I think it's the pushing when you don't want to push. Like we definitely got to a point like around mile, it was like 18 to 21. And I was like, you know what, you guys, we could get really, like we got to really watch ourselves. Like we could get really lazy right here. And it was gorgeous. It was like Fern Gully. I remember it from last year. It was absolutely gorgeous, perfect single track. But I could tell, like, and this is when we were like laughing and, you know, and I could feel us starting to get a little lazy. Like it would have been easy to be like, walk break.
Well, about a month ago, Jill came out to see me in Boston, and we did this 20-miler that's flat and fast that goes from Maine back into Massachusetts. And I remember thinking, oh, it's flat, but I'm like you. Flat to me is not fun. It might be fast, but I need hills in my running. I need the breakup, because we even towards the end. That's why I started going. I'm like, come on, Jill. I was just ready to be done. Let's get this thing done. And it was from point to point. And just the road kept going and going and going. And we're like, when is it going to end? So, yeah, I totally agree with what you said.
Yeah, and I think, especially at the end where it's flat along the headlands, and I was just pushing so hard there, and it hurt so much, but it was more of like I felt like I was carrying like a tractor trailer behind me. Everything just felt so heavy, and I was breathing really hard, but I had my own self in my head like just feel this step, and as soon as I would come back to the present moment, I had no problems. I had no tractor trailer. Like everything was awesome, and then I was like, you know, really calling in higher energies, like calling in the higher energies and like feeling and being like, and that almost took my mind off the physical. It was like I was really feeling into these higher energies of just propelling me forward and being like, I am not the doer. I'm not the doer. Like at the end, I was like, I am not the doer. I am being done right now. And then I was like, let's just get done sooner. So I felt like I was really able to push yesterday more than I could last year. I felt like there was a little more dramatics last year, like really having a hard time breathing and things like that.
I felt like at the end, I felt the freest probably I'd felt the whole day, and I just went, and I didn't feel any pain, and I just was going. I was just going. I don't know what I was just going.
Tell people about the finish so we've been in the woods now. We leave the starting line. We go 10 miles into basically along the forest, and then we go into what Jill described as legit forest.
Yeah.
And tell people about the end of the race when you come out of that forest.
Is this before or after the climb down?
This is after, like when you come out. Oh yeah, well the first time that you see like, oh my God, you're on the
coast. I think you come
coast.
down that, what you think is the end of that rappelling, and then they tell you actually have to go down the waterfall. And then for me, it was like, that's where you think you're going to die. And then you come up and go around and see all of the ocean. And it's like, oh, wait, nope, you're alive. And this is all life. Is that the part you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about how...
We stopped. We're like...
What I'm talking about
is
is
like 3 pictures there.
Is how gorgeous the finish is, and how did that affect you?
I thought the sand sucked. So
Yeah, there's a little
I don't know
section
if
where you have to run. So for people who don't know the course, at about mile, what do you think? Like 28 and a half, you rappel down a 140-foot cliff, which is wet.
Let's call it... We were mountaineering.
And it's all of a sudden you need like serious skills, and you're gripping onto a soaking wet rope, and you're totally fatigued. It kind of reminded me of like when people would ask me like, so when you do a triathlon, is the swim the last thing? And I'm like, no, because everybody would die. Like, and I was kind of thinking, and I'm like, this is like kind of like having the swim at the end of an Ironman, like what we're doing right now. Because all of a sudden I had to use all these skills that I had not been using. And I was like, okay, I got to find this. And trying to like turn around and see if there was any footing beneath me, like when I felt like I had very little rotation. So there is that, which is super fun. So we're just kind of being dramatic about it. Kind of and kind of not, because you could definitely die. But then you come out and you come to the coast, the headlands in Mendocino. And if you've never been out to Northern California, it reminds me of like the coast of Maine. Very rugged coastline.
I'd agree.
But the water is like the color of the Caribbean. Yeah. It's like turquoise. And the wind was blowing crazy. Like we all talked about how we were getting blown all over the place.
Well, and some of the trail was like so narrow, like you couldn't even get we were almost falling over.
Yeah, it was crazy. But for me, like all of a sudden it was like I felt like I just looked at that and was like, all that power out there that's moving the ocean, that power is me. And then I was like, don't worry about the wind, because it's going to be to our backs at some point. And it did get to our backs, which was awesome. But did you feel that power? Were you able to draw from that at all? Or were you just...
I did.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I just knew. I don't know what it was in me. Like it was almost... It's like my knee didn't hurt anymore. Nothing hurt. And I knew I needed like some type of nutrition or drink of water, but I didn't care. I just knew it's like I could see the finish, even though I couldn't see the finish. And I just went. I couldn't stop myself from going. And now I want to try to next time tap into that way earlier instead of when I did.
I would say, and I have a question back to Jill's training, but for me, when we hit aid station 4, which was 20, how many miles was that? 24 miles?
22.4.
Okay, so we had there was definitely incorrect mileage
Yes, we were
along the way there.
Tough one for me.
I didn't even ask them what it was. I just knew we were about 8 or 10 miles or so away. I started pushing it then. Like as soon as we got to that aid station, that's where I turned it on. And so I was kind of breathless from that aid station to the finish, which, that was tough. But Jill, I want to get back to your training. So having the experience you had yesterday, what would you have done more of in your training? Or what, let me really rephrase that to truth. What will you shift in your training leading into your next ultra?
Well, I think I definitely need to focus more on downhills because I really enjoy going uphill and I feel strong going uphill. But when it comes to going downhill, I don't have very sure footing at all. And was sort of at one point was like, Liz, what are we supposed to do when we're going downhill? Because I was watching you guys do it and then trying to emulate it myself, and it wasn't really working. It
definitely
never really
like
worked. So.
Experience is what's
and
gonna
confidence.
Yeah. So I think that and probably focusing on more strength stuff too. But I didn't feel nearly as fatigued as I thought that I would. And then also at the end, normally when I come to the end of a race, I feel like I just want it to be over. And then I'm battling with that. And I feel like this time I was almost slowing down because I didn't want it to end because it's so different from anything that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it's really different from what I'm going back to running into. So I kind of wanted to look at everything, see everything, take it all in versus just get to the finish, which is how I normally feel.
Now, BJ, you haven't done this course yet, but no, you know Brooklyn and you know the city and you know what I've told you about the course and what we've heard so far. What would you recommend for an athlete like in an area where whether it's the city or the flats? How could they prepare for this? Like using what they have at home and in their surroundings.
Yeah, stairs. Obviously, stairs would be amazing, and a stairmaster would probably be awesome. Walking up and walking like backwards.
Are you supposed to do that really fast? What is the okay?
No.
And then put all your weight on the bars.
And then you
Yeah.
But I guess I just never know when you just go. You just get on it and you just go.
You just go.
At a
Yeah,
steady
you'd want to.
pace. What's the?
I would do a varying pace, but I would keep your cadence slow. I would keep it like you're
Like
doing
you're
squats.
climbing.
Oh.
Yeah. Like
Power hiking. And I would also say working on the arms. That was one thing I would see people with their arms by their sides and on their quads.
Sometimes
and I'm
me.
like,
And I would
keep
tell her,
those-
I'm like, Jill, use your arms. Your legs are going to follow what your arms are doing.
Yeah, like go to some of those early mall walking groups.
Yeah.
Because they definitely have the ultra
They
arm
got
swing.
it. Oh, they got it.
But I would do downhill running too. So you just talked about solid with the uphill. Awesome. Like, and incorporate that weekly, but also start incorporating the downhill. It's going to fatigue your legs. The day after you do downhill should absolutely be recovery. Maybe even the second day after, to let all that fitness and taxing your muscles, your quads, let them allowed to absorb all that activity and that pounding. But again, it's not something that you should do. Go out there and jump and do like 10 times 1 minute down a hill. Like ease into these things because they can seriously wreak havoc on your legs.
Yeah,
Seriously.
BJ started with me where I would go out and do, it was like double repeats. I called it the double whammy, where you had to go up hard, but then come down hard. And I think he started me at like 3 or 4, and then I worked up to like 8. And where you're running hard up, you take 10 seconds and then you just book it. Like you're just going and you're not letting your quads stop you from going down.
Yeah,
That's the key.
You're running into the
Yes.
downhill. You're not you're not pounding back.
Yeah.
And then spacing it out, doing it at the beginning of the run and doing it at the end of the run.
Yeah.
So now you're varying. You got steady, then you do the hills, then you do steady, and then you do the hills again. So now it's fatigue. And that depended on 3-4 hour runs.
When I was able to finally get on the trail the last 2 or 3 weeks before the race, he would have me in the middle and at the end do hill repeats. And it's like in the middle, I almost liked that break in what I was doing. But then when I did them at the end, you could totally feel the difference and the fatigue that had set in. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it all serves it's
Yeah.
specificity, right? You want specificity. Also lunges and squats, reverse side lunges.
I think
and forward lunges.
walking lunges
Yeah.
is huge because that's
And I do none of that.
Yeah, and
I do none of that. I don't stretch. I mean, I'm like
you're
surprised that I'm even moving.
I think this is an opening experience for you because you've done how many marathons?
9.
9. So
And I'm doing one this fall that Liz is going to train me for. So
love it.
because I
It's
used
so
an
amazing.
online plan for this.
So what was your okay, let's go into some hard facts here. What was your longest run and mileage leading up to this?
weekly mileage.
So I did
yeah.
all. I know Liz was doing times and I just did miles. So I did 3 20-mile runs during the course of training, which I think my training was 15 weeks or something. I started sometime in January.
And what was your high mileage for the week?
Well, I was doing a lot of cycling too because I found that if I run more than 4 days a week, I either get sick of doing it or my legs start to feel it differently. So I think it was in the low 40s. I never really got super high, which had me worried coming into it. But then I think it turned out to be totally fine.
Yeah, coming into it last year, I was in the 30s a lot with 1 week over 40 because I was really coming back from a break, and that was just where I was, but I was able to build.
And you're
a lot
still
more.
training for a triathlon.
Yeah, and I was training for a half Ironman last year as well. Liz, what was your longest run mileage for the week? Where were you?
My longest runs were I had 2 20-milers. One where BJ gave me, I had a 4-hour run one day, and I pushed it to get 20 in there. And then the next day I had to go back out and run another hour or an hour and 20. Oof. Those 2 days, but I did it. And then I did the 20-miler with Joe when she came out to see me. My highest mileage week was over 52, and it was the week we did the trail run and then the half.
A la the epic training weekend. Yeah. Did you have any other 50-mile weeks?
No, but I had back-to-back high 40s, getting near 50. What I loved about where I was at with this training was just how adapted my body was and how fit it felt. Towards the end when BJ would tell me to go out and do a 2.5-hour run, at the end I wanted to keep going. I could feel my body was definitely, the fitness was there. And I felt good about that considering where I was a year ago after I ran Boston. I was not in a good place. Yeah, so different.
I think you and I had similar summers where I was healing some stuff in my body. You were healing some stuff in your body, repatterning the way that you moved. And
adding a meditation.
And so BJ, how did you, well, first of all, let me answer the question myself. So my longest run hour was 5.5 hours, but that was 22 miles, and that was on the Pacific Crest Trail. But we were in snow, we were in blazing heat, we were in cold. It was crazy. I actually even think we were in Mexico, as one of us got a text on their phone, "Welcome to Mexico." And that was a nice long day, but that was 22 miles. So that was my longest run. And my highest mileage was a 50-mile week, but then I was hanging in the 40s a lot. Then in the last month, I was really feeling the fatigue in my body, and I was feeling some stuff that needed to, it just started to spring up, some plantar fasciitis stuff. And so my mileage had been down into the 30s for the last at least 3 weeks of training, but it was fine. I would just say to BJ, I'm good, right? And he's like, oh my God, you're so fine. And just knowing that I had so much in the bank already, and I knew I was going to be fine. BJ, so with Liz and I coming back this year, kind of from scratch, yes, we have a lot of years under our belt. How did you get us back into training and up to ultramarathon shape from basically when neither of us were running?
Yeah, I think a combination of a few things. Yoga was a big thing to keep that body feeling good, but also to really check your ego. And we started, I think, with 20 and 30-minute runs when you were coming back. And especially with Liz, you were pool jogging. I don't know if you go back to when you were pool jogging.
Yeah. Getting in the pool.
And walking, right? I give walking out a lot for people. You're still moving the body and you're still gaining miles, but you're on your feet, and that just can't be substituted. Strength work too. I think strength work is absolutely important, and it's the balance. It's the balance of all those things. But I feel the feedback that I get from both you and Liz is I can tell when you're ready to be bumped up. So when you were just talking about going 2.5 hours and you wanted more, at that point, that's where I wanted you. I want you to want more, but be able to be okay with whatever you had. And there were workouts there when I felt it was okay to give you ranges, right? I was like, go to 3 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
right? Go to 3 hours and then see where you're at. Now that not only is a safe way to train because you're tuning into your body, but it also gives you the ability to separate ego from what truly should be going on, right? Your ego is probably like, oh my God, he put 3 to 5. I'm definitely going 5. And I think you went one time to the max, which is okay. I knew you would because it was the first time I gave it to you. But the point is to get in at least the mile, the time that's necessary, but also to give you the ability to just be accountable to yourself and to check in. Like, truly, do I need to go 5 hours today? I don't know what you have planned in the afternoon, what you have planned at night, like what's going on in life. There's other stresses. So that's where the ownership comes in. So, and you were walking and slowly coming up. I think you were actually swimming. You were swimming some, incorporating that into training. Lots of yoga.
I was doing through the height of my training, I was doing yoga 6 days a week. I mean, there were weeks where I was doing it 7 days a week because I didn't swim as much this year. I wasn't biking at all. And the yoga was really, really good.
And walking.
For my body.
I remember giving you walks with Clark a lot of times.
Yep.
So again, the walking and doing stairs by the beach.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's all a slow, consistent program. That's what.
Like, you started me with like 8 minutes of walking and like 3 minutes of running when I started to come back to running. But all summer I was doing like hour and a half walks, and I was like, oh, this is kind of nice too. Yeah. Like, as much as I love like those last 8 miles of like pushing it and being like, oh my God, I like going for long walks and just doing yoga and not really like.
It's nice to have that break.
Having clothes that smell like they want to make me throw up, you know? Like,
well, and I think that's one thing that added to my training too is the fact that I walk so much where I live that it's, you know, maybe my high week might have been 45 or 47, but that's the running part of it. And then I think I'm walking easily 5 miles a day and oftentimes more than that. So at the end of the week, that amps up your mileage and time on your feet just from life.
Totally.
It all adds up. Nothing is for a waste.
What were some, Jill, what was like a key moment for you, like on the trail yesterday, something that you were really glad you had, really glad you did, or something that kind of saved you along the way?
I think there were a couple of them. One of them was when, after I had been dying down that hill thinking I would never see you two again, when I saw Liz again, I was like, oh, all right, this is different. Like, I had sort of been in that place in my mind where I wasn't giving up or anything, but I had just sort of resigned myself to knowing that the next rest of the race was going to be alone. And then I realized, oh, it doesn't have to be that way.
That was early too. That was
yeah.
probably like the half marathon mark.
Yeah. I think, as you know, I'm a huge proponent of that Monistat anti-chafing cream that is the best stuff ever. I think it puts Body Glide to shame. It is the best. I mean, you can't tell that I used it if you look at my back, but but it definitely, I mean, it's like great. It's easy to pass out to other people. So I'm really glad I had that. And then I think I'll always remember that place that we came to with the sort of like perfect pitch down where we're running through yellow flowers on all sides of us. And it was like running through a tunnel of sunshine or something that just felt so good. So those were my favorite parts and and my parents came, and that was nice. So good to have family support.
Yeah, and it was, I wish Monistat didn't brand themselves as the yeast infection people, because...
You're thinking of Vagisil?
No, Vagisil is like, well, not that I'm familiar with Vagisil, but I've heard that Vagisil is like killer for ultra runners. Like, it's the best lube. And that's what we thought you had, but then you pulled it out with Monistat. But it's just like Vaseline.
But with a powder base, so...
Oh, is that what it is?
Or something. That's what it says on the tube.
So yeah, that was. Were you using that on your back? Because that wouldn't actually be good advertising at all.
I put it on in the very beginning, but as you know, it was a long time.
Jill has like a 7.5 wide by 3.5 inch deep chafe on her back, which I believe is from carrying Liz's diamond ring.
No, it
for
isn't.
17 miles in
agree
her
with
back
that.
pocket. Yeah.
There's some things that anti-chafing cream can't prevent.
Yeah, it can cut glass and it can chafe you like nothing.
But I
else
also
can do.
recall maybe you using some of that.
Yeah, well, sure. We can jump over to me and then go back to Liz. I was starting to feel this interesting new chafing area where it felt like my left butt had kind of like dropped, like it had like a Bell's palsy kind of syndrome. And then it was like rubbing up against the back of my hamstring. I wasn't quite sure with this how these two parts of my skin were touching, but they were. And so I pulled out Body Glide, which I've never used on the trail before. In 2016, Mike Wardian, one of the best ultra runners, gave me 2 little things of squirrel butter, which is like anti-chafe stuff. And I just ran out of it, so I didn't really have anything. And I was like, oh, I saw one girl on the trail one day use Body Glide, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just use that. But there was always something about that, but I was like, but I never used that on the run of an Ironman. Like I only used that like around my neck and my wrist for a wetsuit.
Use Vaseline on the run.
Yeah, I don't know what, I kind of had like this mind block. So I got this totally overpriced tiny little thing of Body Glide, and as I started running yesterday, I realized I hadn't even put it on. And I remember saying that, I'm like, I have Body Glide, but I didn't put it on. So it's probably better to use it proactively than reactively. But that's what ended up happening, is I used it reactively. And so I got the Body Glide out and I started putting it on like this raw part of my body. And that did not feel good at all. And then, to be totally transparent, I like around mile 18, I peed and it was messed. Like I just peed all over myself kind of thing. And it immediately made me think about how people pee on you when you get a jellyfish sting. And I can't imagine that what I experienced yesterday would have been worse than a jellyfish sting, like a man-o'-war sting. Because that's what it felt. It felt like somebody had just poured like alcohol or vinegar on like raw open wounds. So I was like, Jill, give me the Vagisil. And out came the Monistat. Actually, one girl was running by and gave me something. And I put a whole bunch of that on and that made a difference. But then I was like, I want more. I need to build a wall of lube. And so it was just like my inner thighs, like just, it was kind of a rookie move. Like it was definitely a rookie move having been an athlete for over a decade. It was total rookie move, not putting anti-chafe where it was chafe. So that was a moment around mile 18 where I was reborn, was just loading on that Monistat onto my legs and whatever this area on the back of my thigh and whatever other part of my body that was rubbing up against it to remove skin. That was amazing. And that whole section was like, we got up to the aid station at mile 17, which is where our drop bags were, and they were rowdy, they were crazy. And then the Monistat thing went down, and then a mile down the road was Skip from Healdsburg Running Company, and he was like, it was like he had a full house party, but it was only him. And then we moved into this incredible descent, which was the perfect pitch, and it like Jill said, there were these wildflowers that had grown into a canopy. And we were running through them and like our heads were touching. So like Jill was running in front of me and there was just like yellow flowers like falling like behind her. It was absolutely gorgeous. And so that was like, that was pretty much set me up for like, I don't know what it was. It was like halfway through, not even halfway. It was halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through. And that, I was like a rebirth. That whole section for me was a rebirth, and it was pretty amazing. Yeah. And then I would say the second part was when I realized like, okay, no more peanut butter and jellies, no more Go Macro bars, no more Whole Foods. You need to start taking in some stuff that's easily absorbable, easier on the belly. And I started doing that around mile 20-ish, I ate a whole sleeve of Cliff Blocks, tropical punch, which were like, I know there's a couple servings in here, but I just ate the whole thing. And I felt that sugar rush. So switching that nutrition over, and I want to talk about nutrition too, because that's a good subject for people to hear about, but switching that nutrition, having that like acute self-awareness of being like, okay, good, belly is full of whole foods. I've done a great job at digesting that. I knew I was going to go hard those last 10 miles. So I wanted to start prepping my belly. And when I made that switch, that was another rebirth section. Liz, what about you?
What's the original question?
The original question is like, were there moments on the trail where you had like, you know, I don't know, a moment of like transformation or where maybe something got tough and you were able to come out of it?
So for me, I feel like the first moment was the first aid station, and we did founder's pose, because I found that with all the training I did and the taper, and I was being really mindful about recovery and taking care of myself these last 2 weeks, I felt like the first few miles should have felt better than they did, and they did not. And I was getting tight in my upper hamstrings, across my glutes, into my lower back, and I was trying to keep it together and not like project to the future and just stay right there. And then we stopped and we did the pose, and it's like everything changed after I just needed to loosen that up. And then I would say the next was when we got to climb and not be running the flat part at the beginning anymore, and the downhill, and having fun going through the river crossing and seeing Jill fall into the water.
Thank you, Jill.
Which made my 1 foot fall into the water. But then you learn that like, oh, it's really fine, and they dry really fast. And then that whole same thing with the yellow flat. We were just in a groove, just running through that. It was the perfect pitch, everything. It was so good.
It was total.
It was so
flow.
good. Yeah,
and just for the
flow.
record, we all came to the conclusion that we all felt like crap the first 10 miles.
Yeah.
But nobody
didn't give it-
talked about it,
Right.
which I think was so key.
Yes.
Because we were just cruising along. I felt like crap. I had like sciatic pain going down the back of it felt like everything was closing in on the right side of my leg and like just strangling my sciatic nerve. My left plantar fascia was sore, like at the attachment point. And I was like, it's cool. And then after 10, like after that first climb, everything felt good. And then I was like, of course it does. Because we're training for something long. Like it takes a while to warm up, you know, like, and maybe we
10
should have
miles,
taken
yeah.
BJ's like, if you guys want to do a
10
warm up run, and we all looked at him like, no, there's no warm up run.
And then he said jumping jacks, to
Yeah.
which we said no thank you.
No, thank you. But that was a warm up run, right? Like that that felt like crap. How did you feel that first 10 miles or so?
I actually didn't mind it at all because that was pretty close to what I had been training on. So it was like a road that was trail. So it felt but then by the time we got later in the race, I was like, oh, I can see why Jess thought this sucked to end on flat last year. But when we started, I was thinking, oh, this would be great, blah, blah, blah. But then you do realize that it's terrible to run on flat.
It is. It's terrible. So last year the course it's a big loop, and this year we ran it in reverse, which now the first 10 miles is a long big river, and there's some false flats. There's a little bit of up, a little bit of down, but you would probably say that it's pretty flat. Mm-hmm. And you get to that point where, as like a trail runner, you're like, I just want to go up. I just want to climb. Like, I just want to climb. And so the flats, I think, are pretty challenging. But yeah, I felt like crap.
I thought it was perfect for it helped me build my confidence, I think, too, because it was the first trail.
Just like, I'm trail running. Yeah. I'm trail running.
Like,
this is all
perfect.
new.
Yeah.
This is all new.
I think that was helpful also, because then by the time we were, if we had been doing that downhill, or if we were on that single track where I thought I was going to fall over the whole time, to start with, it would have been, I might have gotten in my head too much in the beginning.
Overall, the trails were incredible condition. It was dry out there. There was some muddy parts, but there was it made me realize how muddy it was last year. It was very runnable. It was really, really could not have been better conditions yesterday.
It's awesome.
So you guys were super dialed on your nutrition. You were doing that in solidarity yesterday. How do you think your nutrition went? What did you eat? How did it go? And did you get to a point where you deviated from that plan based on how you felt?
Every 30 minutes, so I'd been training at first in my training, I wouldn't be taking any nutrition in for the first 45 minutes to an hour. And BJ and I talked, and we found that probably wasn't the best to be doing. So I started taking it in every 30 minutes and I brought in whole foods. And what worked for me was taking in some PB&J every 30 minutes. So that's what we pretty much each made 3 PB&Js to take with us. And I had probably a half of sandwich every 30 minutes to start with. And then I would say at some point I did not want a PB&J and switched and had a picky bar, a half of one, and then I had the other half. And then after that, I think I switched to gel, but then I went back and finished my last half. I just felt like I needed more of the whole food. And then at some point, I was just really in tune with my body of when it felt like it really needed something. I think I ate a couple scratch chews. The best part of my nutrition yesterday was when I realized I did not leave my cacao beans in my drop bag, and Jill found them at the bottom of my pack. And I basically took a handful and just shoved them all in my mouth, and that kind of changed everything, along with having the sweet taste of Coke, which I never drank at aid station. The last aid station was unbelievable. And I just had noon hydration in my pack, and I had a soft water bottle, and those all worked. And I literally drank everything in my hydration pack, and at the aid stations, I would refill my soft water bottle with water. And then I think we might have picked up a PB&J at the aid stations here and there. I ate a couple pieces of they had cut up banana, and I love banana, so that I did that. Yeah, and it all, I never felt like I wasn't going to make, it was all work, no stomach issues at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, those PB&Js were killer.
Yeah, they're so
they
good.
really made them really well. Everything was overflowing. Jill, so you were kind of on the same nutrition plan, similar? No? You're laughing.
No, yeah, I just did everything that Liz did, except I don't eat bananas.
Sounds so awesome.
I don't eat bananas because they make my stomach hurt. And we took in salt tabs too.
We did, that's
which I
right.
think was
We did
really
take in
important.
salt tabs.
But I had never trained with real food until we did the 20 miler from Maine to Massachusetts, and I feel like then after that I started doing all of my long runs with food, and make my running partner grab it out of my bag for me, and that's what we did out on the trails. And I think that I'm such a believer in that now, because usually I have some point on a long run where I feel like I'm going to have a breakdown, or, I packed raisins yesterday in case I wanted to cry, because I feel like those are what I take in for quick sugar to level out my attitude, I guess. But I didn't need any of it, because I think that if you, doing the fueling every 30 minutes makes me realize that you just need to keep topping off the tank, because if you ever get depleted, it's really hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
So I know you came to our mindfulness talk.
I did.
And Liz has been with us for a few years, so I know she's drinking the Kool-Aid and living the life, and I've seen so much transformation in her. And your dad, Jim, is now meditating. He was
true.
meditating on a rock. Your mom told me that several times. I was like,
And he sent me a text saying he was going to be meditating this morning until we were ready.
This morning. Did you use any of that, or did anything stick with you?
I actually, in the end by the headlands, and at one other point when it was flat, I was paying attention to my breath exclusively instead of paying attention to anything else. But it was, I would count 3 in, 3 out. And I thought that, or if I was starting to get to a place where I was if I thought I was breathing too heavy or whatever else, then I would do that to kind of level things out.
That worked.
Yeah.
Liz, how do you use mindfulness in your racing? How did you use it yesterday?
Oh, wait, one other thing.
Give me that mic back. We're not talking about your dirty visor.
No, but the other thing I was going to say is that I think that I thought a lot about, sorry about that, that I thought a lot about what you were saying about being present, because there were definitely things, I asked you about the river crossing probably 30 times.
Several times. And this is a great example. She kept asking about the river crossing. Yeah. Is this it? Is this it? We'd like go over a puddle. Is this it? I'm like, no, it's a river crossing. It's somewhere between like as big as Big River and that puddle we just crossed. It's fine. But it's the perfect example of you being in the future, because when we showed up to the river crossing, even though you didn't go this way, there was a huge log, and there was like a I don't even know, it wasn't like a dock because it was half sunk, but there was a
sunken dock.
Yeah, it was a sunken dock, but there was a way this year to cross the creek where you didn't have to get your shoes wet. So here I am telling her, like, you're gonna get your shoes wet, and so this is what she was preparing for, which is exactly what ended up happening, because she fell off the log. So core strength, Liz, you have to get her core strength in one-legged poses. So it's the perfect example, because she kept asking and asking about it, and then when we showed up, it was totally different than it was last year.
But I think that what I noticed for myself, at least, is that I was asking about those things, but I didn't feel any of the future in my body, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't have any anxiety around it or anxiousness or anything, because I was so rooted in the now, even though I was asking about those things. Like, the things that I thought would worry me down the road, like, I didn't let myself think too much about the rappelling down the waterfall until I got there, and then I was like, well, this is scary, and then I was just in it, and then it was over. And I think that was helpful versus running up 20 some miles and then stressing about it the whole time. So I think I did a lot more to be in the moment than like thinking ahead to the next drop spot or whatever, like the thing that I was worried about coming ahead.
Yeah,
So.
I'm glad I didn't think about the rope descent either, because it was like 20 times more intense than I thought it would be. It was like, just because you're so freaking fatigued and all of a sudden you're like, I got these hands and a wet, slippery rope and a soaking wet 140 foot cliff. Go. Be in the present moment. So, Liz, how did you use it yesterday in your racing? How has, because you've had huge shifts in your life, like how has this changed the way that you approach and your experience yesterday? Let's talk specifically about your experience yesterday.
So the first 10 miles was a challenge just because I was feeling that tightness, and I started the circle in my mind of I shouldn't be feeling this way already. But the difference was a year ago, I would have taken that bait and it would have completely probably annihilated me for the rest of the run. Whereas yesterday, it was just yesterday, right? I felt, and then I was also giving myself a hard time, like, just about it. Like, I should feel better than this. And then I stopped it, and I said, I just used the keep moving forward and breathing, and I was just listening to you guys talk and not giving it any more energy. So whenever I did that, like, I just didn't feel it. The next time I was faced with it was when we got to the fourth aid station, and I thought we had gone farther. And the woman said, no, we really thought we were like at 24, 25 miles. And she's like, no, you're only at 22.4. That was a tough few minutes for me, where I was pissed. I probably wanted to punch the volunteer, but I wouldn't have, because the volunteers were awesome and also very helpful. And then I realized we had to run on road. So I just drank water, had a banana. I think that's when I had a goo, and we just kept going. And we talked about how much the road sucked, but then we were laughing and whatever. Then the next time I had to use it was my right knee started giving me a lot of problem. And anytime I went downhill, I almost had to use the breathing I used when I had my 2 children. And I was really trying to focus on my third eye. But I never got to a point where I didn't think I would finish. That wasn't an issue. Then I was getting hung up on my time. Like, my knee is going to slow me down. Like, I'm already at 6 hours. Like, okay, whatever. How much is it really going to slow you down? And I broke down in tears a couple times where Jill is like, thank God for Jill, honestly, where she was like, can I do anything to help you? And I'm like, no. I said, I just need to shed this layer.
It's perfect.
And
it's probably better that I wasn't with you at that point.
And I just started telling my knee that that's fine, you can be there, but I'm driving the bus. Like, I'm continuing to move forward. And so anytime we were going downhill, I just had to, for a little while, walk those downhills, and then we'd run the rest of the time. And it really helped finding my cacao beans. I loved climbing down the wall because, like, I didn't look down. I just went with it. I just kept walking down. I did at the bottom kind of lose it a little, and my bum knee slammed into the wet concrete. But other than that, it was fine. The rest of the run was fun, though, because we were laughing because at the comedy of where we still had to do these climbs, and it was a muddy face, and there was down limbs and climbing over stuff. But then you came through that other side to that opening of the ocean, and it was like after that we were good. And then you take that road into the headlands, and like I said, after that, it's like I don't know what happened, but like my knee, everything was just flowing. Yeah.
Like it went away. You weren't focusing on it.
I wasn't at all.
Yeah, what we focus on expands. But I love what you said, like, I'm just going to shed this layer. And that's a great mindset to have, because that's all it is. Like, it's not about holding back the tears. It's not about pushing them back down, because that can create more frustration. Just experience them and realize what it is. You're just releasing something. You're doing something extreme out there. Running 32 miles is a long way. And, you're just shedding this layer. I love it. And then just move on.
And I had to remind myself, we're not running this on the road. Like, if it was on the road, yeah, we'd have a better time, like total time of getting it done. This was completely nothing I've ever done before, completely different. And there was so much comedy relief on the trail, like, especially when we finally saw BJ at the last aid station, and we're walking because Jill, there was a whole like wide road around us, but somehow she took my left shoe off. And then I had
called a flat tire.
Yeah, which we didn't realize. I didn't realize. So that was fun, trying to lean over and put that back.
Jill was a little bit of an assassin on the trail. She almost pushed me off a cliff.
It was my first time.
Yeah. There was a couple times where I was like right off her shoulder, and her elbow was like very close to giving me a black eye. I was like, she's definitely like, if you run next to her, she pushes you off the trail.
Veers into you.
Yeah, it's like an alpha dog that doesn't realize that they're being alpha. Okay, so let's get this wrapped up. Having been your first ultra yesterday, what's one piece of advice you would give somebody who's looking to do this in the future? And what's next for you?
I would say, do it. Like, you've got one body, one life. Like, why not do it? The experience was so amazing. And yes, I'm tired and my body hurts today, but it's going to feel 100% better tomorrow. And given that I'm 51 and doing this and crushing it, like, I highly recommend that. Like, and the beautiful scenery we saw was unbelievable. I can't imagine not doing this.
Yeah, would you recommend this race?
Oh, hands down,
So
one of the best races I've ever done. First of all, aid stations are cool. And it felt kind of cool going into aid stations because I've been watching all these documentaries where people do it, and I'm like, oh, these are so cool. And the volunteers were unbelievably like helpful and wanting to fill your water bottle. Like you didn't have to do anything. And Sid being there at the end, giving you a high five, and all the people still there cheering for you, even though it's like 8 hours into the thing.
The ultra runner tribe.
And it's just beautiful. I would highly recommend it. And then what's next is I would like to do the Sonoma 50 next year. Definitely.
Sweet. I like it.
But my next big race this year is I'm doing the Chicago Marathon.
How do you feel like you're going to be like going back to the road?
So the mental challenge there is going to be that Chicago is pretty flat and for 26.2 miles. So that is where my challenge will lie. But what I want to do with that, so I look at that as a way to work on that, pushing it earlier instead of later and getting better at that. So yeah, I'm just psyched and looking forward to what else can I do? Like there's no limits.
I love that. Jill, what's your advice? First timer, new shoes.
The awesome visor.
Yeah, all of it. Well, definitely get a visor is number one on my.
Jill is
Number
the
one on my
only
list of
ultra runner
advice.
that runs in tennis accessories.
Don't listen to
She
my
has this
mom on that.
disgusting
It is
visor
from a running store
that she ran. She's a disgusting visor that she ran in yesterday that was white back in the early 1980s, and now it's just like a rust. It's like rust and beige striped.
Yeah, and it served me well. I never had to take sunglasses on or off. It's
I know.
perfect for
Anytime
the
there was
rain.
anything, she's like, I wouldn't know because I have a visor on.
It did get in the way when I got my medal at the end, but I'd say that's the only drawback. So it's that and how styling it is another drawback, but it's very functional.
know you without it, actually.
Oh,
It's like
I
it's
would.
like my calling card.
I would like to know you without it. So besides getting a dirty, nasty visor to wear at the race, what would you recommend? What would be your tip or advice that you pulled away yesterday that you want to share?
I think just similar to what Liz said, to do it and not be I've never been on trails, and I could have been afraid or chosen to never do it because I didn't really have access to trails. And I think yesterday, this was the least anxious I've been leading up to a race, which I thought was really interesting because of the number of things I did for the first time yesterday. But I think just doing it and then being there to enjoy it the whole time also. It was such a beautiful experience. This course is amazing. I think that, just like Liz was saying, having Sid at the end, having all the volunteers from the aid stations there at the end too, felt like you were seeing friends who have been along the course with you.
Didn't you feel like everybody was like your best friend?
Yes, it was
Healdsburg Running
awesome.
Company, big shout out to the people from HRC because
Yeah.
they were
Holding it down.
awesome.
Yeah.
They were holding it down, faux fur coats
Yeah.
and the whole thing. They were really putting it down. They were awesome.
It was awesome.
Cool. Oh yeah, what's
Oh
next?
yeah, so I'm doing New York this year, and Liz is gonna train me. So I'm excited to see what it's like to not get a training plan from online because it's the only place I've ever
Or
gotten
know your
them.
whole week in advance.
Yeah, so it'll be a lot of learning for me, a lot of information gathering. And then I'll probably just do whatever she asks me to do next because that's how I ended up here. So
Like it.
And you, what's your one piece of advice that people can take away? Because this is your second ultra, and it seems like you've just fully embraced the lifestyle. So, what do you think someone who's curious about getting into this distance or is having some hesitation? What do you think you can share with them, which would help them maybe take that leap?
Well, I have shown myself in the last couple of years that I can get stronger and faster in my mid-40s on plants and a lot of meditation and a lot of yoga. And I just think that's so cool because there was many times where I didn't think that I could get faster or stronger. And I felt it yesterday. But my biggest piece of advice is if there's things in your life that you fear, that cause you fear, to look at those and get really curious about them. Because if I didn't get curious about my fear, I never would have discovered this sport that just fills me with joy, which was the absolute perfect next step after triathlon for me, and something that I continue to want to do into the future. And there's no doubt in my mind that I want to go longer. And after yesterday and looking at how I can have a 30-minute PR in a year, and just the amount of distance that I was able to put on my body from year 1 to year 2, there's no doubt that year 2 to year 3 is going to be even better, because you have to be patient when you're going longer. You have to be patient. It's not all going to happen in 1 year. It's not all going to happen. And I love that I can see these incremental changes, and that my ability as an athlete just keeps up-leveling and up-leveling physically, but also that mental game is really the limitless piece. That, again, fear is a part of that. Anxiety is a part of that. Frustration, getting down on yourself. Get curious about those things. But again, if I didn't have that courage to look at what I was fearful of, I never would have started trail running. And when I started trail running by myself. And so I really got a chance to face those fears. And I've been looking into like what courage means recently, and because I talk about how it really takes courage to live, the life that you and I live, BJ. And courage is not about not being afraid. It's about being afraid, but you're not paralyzed. And I think that that's a great way to transmute fear into courage and keep moving forward. So what you're fearful of is going to remain there until you deal with it. So it's possible to get to the other side. What's next for me? Sonoma 50 miler next April. Yep. It's going to be a challenging one. So I think Jill's going to be in too, because Liz is already in, and Jill's going to do what Liz says. So we will see you guys in Sonoma next year, and hopefully out in San Diego for some training.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you should probably just keep those trail shoes, and
I think
then they'll be nice and broken in.
Size up though, still.
Oh,
That's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to go bigger.
You didn't listen to me on that one.
All right, you guys, we're out from Mendocino, California.